Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inhaled Insulin. Fast in, fast out fits your lifestyle. By Omnipod 5, the only tubeless pump that integrates with Dexcom G6. By Dexcom G7, powerful, simple diabetes management. And by Edgepark, simplify your diabetes journey with Edgepark.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, a new movie's in the works about diabetes. It's fictional, a thriller, co-written and directed by someone who lives with type 1.
There's nothing more fun than making movies and being in the middle of that collaborative team sport with people. It's my life. Basically, insulin and movies.
That's Mike Hogan. He explains more about what the movie's about, how you can help get it made, and what it's been like for him to follow a childhood dream that, let's face it, isn't very stable and doesn't include health insurance, a couple of things you need when you live with diabetes in the U.S. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I am always so glad to have you here. You know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. My son was diagnosed with type 1 right before he turned 2. He is going to turn 19 soon, and he is away from college. I have received a lot of messages and emails asking how Benny is doing. I'll tell you in a second, but first I got to say, I so appreciate the suggestions for a Benny segment. He comes on once or twice a year. He was most recently on to talk about going to college, and we joked about having a regular check-in with him or something. A bunch of you liked that idea, but Oliver wrote in and said, "Hi, Stacey. I am a teen with T1D, and I have an idea for Benny's segment." Oliver says, "Jab yourself," which stands for Just Ask Benny Yourself, which is also, pun on the jabbing part of diabetes. Oliver knows what he's talking about. He goes on to say, "I thought Benny might like something like that because of his sense of humor and interest in forensics and gruesome things. Ha ha." Thank you, Oliver. You are 100% correct. I sent that to Benny. He thought it was brilliant. He also said he apologizes. He is busier than he ever thought the first semester of college. We could have told him so, right? But when he comes home for the winter break, we'll get your questions so we can jab. We can just ask Benny. I love that, Oliver. Thank you. I also wanted to mention Benny because when I spoke to Mike Hogan, this week's guest, the first thing he mentions is that episode from back in August. If you didn't hear that, what Mike says might not make much sense. That's what he's referring to. It is quick, and I will link up that episode in the show notes for this one. We also talk about the Writers and the Screen Actors Guild strike. Some of that has been settled, some of that has not. By the time you listen, it may all be settled. I left it in because it was part of a larger discussion. I found it interesting. I hope you do too. I thought it was worth keeping in. Okay, my guest is Mike Hogan, the co-writer and director of a movie in the works called The Cost. Here's the synopsis. When a desperate diabetic mother and her devoted husband pull off a night of small-scale robberies to afford the soaring cost of insulin for her and their son, they must confront the consequences of their actions while fighting to survive. You will hear from Mike and all about The Cost right after this. I'm amazed how hard these automated insulin delivery systems work. Omnipod 5 automatically increases, decreases, or pauses insulin delivery every 5 minutes. This technology is called Smart Adjust, and it's in the pod. So that means if you're out on the football field and the controller is in your bag, the pod and Dexcom G6 continue to talk and make adjustments. That would have been awesome for us. Benny played football in middle school, or maybe when he was backstage at the school play too. All of that, and you get the freedom of no tubes. Fill out the quick online form. See if you are eligible for a free trial. Go to diabetes-connections.com. Click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, also visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Mike, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here and interested to talk about this project. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Stacey. I am fast becoming a fan of the show. And I want to talk about the film, but there's a more important issue that I think has been popping up on the podcast lately, and it's the silencing of Benny by the media. So we can get into the film, but I decided as a journalist and a narrative filmmaker, I'd take this opportunity to do some hard hitting work.
Mike, it's been nice having you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Wow. Yeah. So thank you very much. My son is off to college. It's been a while now since he came on the show and did not like that I was trying to steer the conversation in certain ways. He's a character. Oh my gosh.
He's hilarious. But also that episode, I listened to it this morning before we hopped on, and I kind of wish that I had that episode when I went to college too. It was amazing. And I hope Benny's I know it's been a few weeks, so he's probably out there, but I hope it's a great start and that he's enjoying it, because that could be really hard when you go to college and you're type 1 and you're figuring stuff out. But it sounds like he's got kind of the most amazing support system and profile on the podcast too. But,
you're really kind to say. But Mike, let's start right there with you. So you live with type 1. We're going to talk a lot about the movie, but let's start with that. You kind of said you wish you'd had that kind of interview. God love you. Were you diagnosed as a kid?
Yeah, when I was 15. So right in the middle of high school, which is not like the world's best timing. I don't know what would be exactly with a type 1 diagnosis, but that was definitely like a challenging time. And yeah, I struggled with it a bit. I think as a lot of people do, especially when you're that age, to just kind of keep it under control. There were some transition years for me for sure. Finishing high school and then going to college, and then kind of just finding my rhythm and understanding it and understanding how my body reacted to certain things, and kind of just finding, I guess, like that flow state that you can get into, and then just trying to maintain it. But yeah, those years can be pretty hard, because especially when you go off to college, you're just getting so many different things thrown at you that I'm sure you as a parent understand it. Like they're very outside of the usual realm of kind of control and whatnot. So that was when I was diagnosed, but I feel like I was able to wrap my head around things, fortunately, pretty quickly. It feels like it was yesterday. Listening to that episode with Benny also made me feel incredibly old at the ripe old age of 30. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. And it wasn't until kind of recently in the last few years that I decided that I did really want to lean into that experience and turn it into stories and try to turn those into films.
Well, let's talk about this then. How did the idea and the project, the cost, come together?
The original seed is actually kind of silly and circuitous, but I was on a camping trip with a former girlfriend, and we showed up at a camping site, and we didn't realize, because we were just, coming in from Los Angeles, that you could not pay with a debit card. Go figure. You needed to pay cash.
Wow.
And it sent us on this kind of goose chase hunt for an ATM up in Angeles National Forest. And it just kind of sparked this idea of like, oh, you need money, you need an ATM, we're in the woods. And I just started talking with her about, we should go just like rob an ATM or do something like that, like just joking. And it just snowballed into this idea of like, well, what if you were a couple and you needed to afford insulin and you started to do this? And when I say circuitous, it really is, because this film we're doing right now is a short film, proof of concept. And this original idea, the germ, is for a feature film that takes place largely in Angeles National Forest, where the premise is a family with the mother who is type 1, has a son who is just getting diagnosed, and they've already been under the gun, unable to afford what she needs just to get by, and are hit with a fresh diagnosis, another family member. And they kind of turn to what they unfortunately know, having been in the system for a while. They have to kind of pull off a larger crime to deal with not just more insulin that they need every month, but also a whopper of a hospital bill. And they end up in this kind of epic crime heist scenario in Angeles National Forest. So it really is like, that's the original way, way back idea. But the overall premise is much simpler, and I think kind of painfully obvious too, in terms of wanting to tell a story with type 1 characters that is a little different from what has been out there. I think that there's films that feature type 1 characters, but they're never the lead. And I think of movies like Panic Room or Memento, which are really great films. And like I mentioned those two because I think they actually get it right. Panic Room in particular, I don't think the word diabetes is said once. I don't think they were avoiding it. I just think they wrote it very smartly so that you understood every step and what it meant for the character, and it created really fantastic tension. But they're never the lead. You never see a type 1 lead character in a film. And I'm not going to act like we're the first doing it. There's a lot of people popping up right now. And so it's kind of exciting because it feels like we're a part of a wave. But I wanted to tell a story that I wasn't seeing told, which is really an anti-hero type 1 character. And the obvious premise I alluded to earlier being they cannot afford insulin and they are in the most desperate situation, and they're going to take really desperate measures to get what they need to survive.
Let me ask you this. As somebody who enjoys movies, but really has no idea how they come together, when you say, okay, I'm going to do this, we have an idea for this, here's the treatment for it, right? Here's the summary about it. What happens next? I mean, I know you could probably talk for 4 hours about that, but could you take us through a little bit of the process of how something goes from your idea to even a short test film?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I could go painfully at length about this. We could start a whole film podcast on its own. But
I like that idea.
Yeah, I mean, hey, let's talk about it. The path that it takes is very much, in this case, a premise. And I think a more successful route for a script would be to start with a character and their need. But we kind of went backwards, which made the process actually pretty difficult and painful at times to really reach what was important and honest for the characters, because that should always drive the story. But we started with the premise that insulin is way too expensive in America. And our political approach to the film is very broad. This is not the film that's going to try to educate or do anything past that, because we really are just interested in the characters, in a story that is character-based and trying to deal with their emotions and the situation that they're in. So we started with insulin is too expensive for people in America. That's an objective fact. I don't think anyone could argue with that at all. It just is a reality. And we take that and we start to go, okay, what are they going to do about it? What is their background? And then what is going to be entertaining? And that's just a huge, huge part of it. And frankly, that's why we chose the crime genre, because we believe in genres, whether it's horror, crime, thriller, whatever, they're just inherently entertaining ways to tell a story that everyone's going to want to watch. But you get to put ideas in them. They're really a container. So that was like the first thing was like, great, let's make it a crime film. Mm-hmm. And then you just start outlining, at least that's our process. And you start to figure out, what are they going to do? What action is going to lead to the next one? What is pushing them as characters, both their kind of external need of like, oh, we need insulin, but also the internal stuff, which is really what becomes more interesting. And like, who is this character? What's going on with her in particular, Penny, the lead, besides just this need for insulin? And we just try to dovetail those things into pushing the story forward and kind of exploring certainly a lot of ideas that are, again, more external and dealing with like the political realities, but then really trying to continually find our way back to the internal stuff and dealing with the emotional realities and why does this character feel that way? So it's a lot of that, a lot of outlining, and then starting to write, going back to the drawing board, getting other people to read drafts to tell us this is terrible, you should change this, or this is actually good and it's working, and just continually smoothing it out like that. And once you have a script, in our case with the short script, we're confident enough that it's in good shape. We put together a pitch deck and try to find the visuals and all that. And then you're just kind of off to the races as we are. And then you go, okay, we need to go find some money to make this because, it's not the most expensive thing in the world, but it's not the cheapest either.
So I guess that's what I was asking. I was thinking you were going to answer me by saying, well, we write it, then we shoot it, then we edit it, and then we release it. But where are you in the process right now? Is it written? Quick biology fact. Did Did you know your lungs have the surface area of a tennis court? That's interesting. But why is it important? Well, since Afrezza is a powder you inhale, the insulin is delivered through the large surface area of the lungs, which allows for ultra-rapid absorption. The insulin passes through your lungs into your blood in less than 1 minute. Your blood sugar may start to lower in about 12 minutes. That's glucose management in the moment. Find out more, see if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium. It's not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you've ever smoked, ever have kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety.
Yes, and you're right. Those are definitely all the steps. I'm very much living in the space of we're continually fundraising, and that is exactly what will happen with this film. It will be a film one day. But right now it's a script, and we are so entrenched in the fundraising that it feels like all that is in the near future, but not very much a reality right now. I was talking to our lead actress the other day, and we were joking where it's like, one day we're going to actually make the film, and that's going to be really great. But it is, a pretty intensive fundraising process. I've shot short films for a lot cheaper than this, and some of the best ones that I've produced are very, very inexpensive. But I've done enough, and given especially the current state of the industry with the WGA and SAG on strike, and we're recording a little bit before, but I'd be willing to bet they will still be on strike when this releases. I hope they're not. But people need to be taken care of. And if you're going to ask people to come out to work on your passion project, it's very important for us that they're paid a pretty fair wage, especially this one's going to have some night shooting going on. So no one wants to keep getting the call to just kind of show up and help out on a short film. It's not the most rewarding experience to someone who is going to be setting up your lighting equipment or that sort of thing. And then, of course, getting insurance, getting permits, and just doing it all professionally. So we're working our buns off fundraising. But yes, we're going to film it. We're going to have a really fun time editing it. That's just like the most magical period, I think, and sound mixing and doing color correction. And then it's going to be out there, and we're going to be trying to push it through the festivals and the usual indie film life cycle, but also just trying to get it in front of as many people with diabetes as possible. Because I think I'm making it because I want to see myself in some ways, on screen. And I hope that people will feel the same way, that it's going to capture things that they feel are true. I mean, most of us are not going out and pulling off small robberies to afford insulin, fortunately. But we are very much experiencing the same things emotionally as our main character.
That's exactly the question I was about to ask you, actually. The strike that you mentioned, How would that affect your film?
Well, fortunately for us, it would not.
Oh, okay.
The strike, I'll try to not turn this into a strike thing, but I'll first say the strike is incredibly necessary. And what SAG is asking for, what the WGA is asking for is 100% deserved. And I think that we're pushing in a good direction. I think it's going to be a victory. So I'm very just optimistic and happy about that. But a film of this size is not barred from going into production. There's no WGA affiliations with it. We might be a SAG signatory, but because we're in a particular budget range, which is under $50,000, that is not a struck contract with SAG. So we're good to go. And I think their attitude is, well, we want certain projects that are truly independent to still be able to work so that people can still create art and hopefully make a little bit of money, which I think is a great approach that they're taking, but we'll be totally clean.
Got it. Mike, how did you know you wanted to make movies? Was this something you always wanted to do? Is it something you fell into? Tell me about that part of you.
Yeah, I think since high school and maybe even a little bit before, but I love movies. Like, they are my religion and my life. I was raised Irish Catholic, and I realized somewhere in the mix that film took on a very spiritual place for me. And I just love it. I just think it's the most amazing art form. It's just so beautifully expressive. I think there's so much empathy that can be communicated through film. And it's just the best. And there's a reason everyone loves it. And there's nothing more fun than making movies and being in the middle of that collaborative team sport with people. It's my life. Basically, insulin and movies is it for me. And
well,
if I can, yeah.
As a mom, right, and we're all concerned about our kids and their future when they get off our health care. Were your parents concerned? Like, is he going to make a living? Is he going to get insurance? You know, I mean, speaking of the writer's strike and SAG and everything else, was that a concern for you?
Yeah, it's a continual concern for sure. I think my mom is a little less concerned. And certainly when I was coming out of college, everyone realized, okay, he's not going to go to law school. They gave up on that. They stopped hounding me. And then they started to see me get some work. And I don't think they know quite how dire it was at times, kind of scraping my way into the film industry. But over the years, they've just kind of seen like, oh, he's doing okay. He's making a living. He's following his passion. And I think they've learned through me that it's like, I mean, it's a business, you know, and it's a very tough business, but knock on wood, I've been able to make it work so far. The insurance side, though, is incredibly frustrating. And you mentioned the WGA. They're a great union. They have great health insurance. And I wish every union and guild was as effective as them, both in that department and also in collective bargaining, like with the strikes. But I'm not in the WGA. I'm in the Producers Guild, but they don't offer health insurance. So I just buy it off the marketplace in California. And like most things in California, it's not cheap. So that's just an ongoing concern. And I mean, even people who have good insurance, it always shocks me. And I spoke to someone at a sizable diabetes nonprofit. I don't want to call them out, but like, he was telling me he was upset that he should have spotted the bad plan that they were offering sooner. And he was literally telling me that he's cutting costs and making sure that he doesn't have to do X, Y, or Z so that he doesn't have to pay out of pocket enormously. And I'm like, man, you have a good job and you're dealing with the same thing that the characters in our film are. For anyone's personal experience to be related to it. And it's a film, so we're heightening it, of course. You want to heighten the drama. It's narrative. It's not a documentary, but it's proportionately relatable to so many people. You know, I'm hopeful that in the near future, I'll be able to get into one of those guilds that offers better health insurance. But yeah, it's an ongoing struggle. And I think my mom definitely sleeps better at night knowing that the proof is in the pudding, that I'm making it, I'm doing okay. But I don't tell her as much, but it stresses me out frequently. It's just, there's no two ways about it.
You have not really a partner, but you're kind of working with a diabetes group with this movie, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Type 1 International is our fundraising partner. And when we set out to make the film, you know, it's like, this is good. And inherently, this film will raise awareness. And that's obviously important to us. It's important to me because it is kind of shocking when you talk to people and they just don't seem to know that insulin is still incredibly unaffordable. And it still is after the price cap. And I feel like some people don't want to talk about that, but it just is. It's just an ongoing issue. So we felt like it was important if we were going to be asking for the amount of money we're trying to raise for a film about insulin affordability, that it would just be exploitative and irresponsible to not also try to raise money towards an organization that is fighting for insulin affordability. And given the nature of the film, that it's not the most squeaky clean bit of representation and portrayal, and it's putting a type 1 character in an anti-hero role. You know, we knew that this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and I'm a fiercely independent filmmaker, and Type 1 International is a fiercely independent nonprofit. And a lot of their values really align with the tone and the values of this project. So we got linked with them and we told them about the film. And we told them, hey, we want to work together to raise some money. And it was a pretty quick union of, great, let's do this. And it's been a pretty great collaboration in ways that were not expected, in the sense that I think if you get involved with a nonprofit or a corporate entity and you're an independent filmmaker, you might just be resistant of, well, we don't want them to try to influence things or anything like that. And we did share the script with them, and they actually came back with notes that were really helpful. There's a lot of people with diabetes that work there, and they had really fantastic thoughts. And my co-writer, Jerome Cleveland Keith, and I went back and did some revisions, and we were looking at it and we were like, did not expect it to go this way, but these are great notes. These are really, really helpful. So there's been, some light creative collaboration with them. But yeah, it's like we wanted to find the right partner and try to drive money towards the issue.
We're speaking while your fundraising campaign is going on, but we may be airing this episode when it is finished. So if that is the case, and I'm so sorry about the shifting time nature of podcasting, what can people do to support you now?
Well, I appreciate that you plugged it in an earlier episode too. And, we're just happy to talk about it. The Indiegogo, will be closed at this point, but we do have a separate channel for donations. We have a separate nonprofit that is a fiscal sponsor called From the Heart Productions, and they're able to receive tax-deductible donations. Of course, if you want to donate to the film and support it, you can get a tax write-off if you donate through them. And I should add, the donations that have come through the Indiegogo and the donations that will come through our fiscal sponsor, 20% of those donations will go to Type 1 International.
Got it. Oh, good. So the window has not really closed.
Yeah, the window's still open. And that's the cool thing is, Indiegogo, you kind of have to create a focused window. And it's obviously a great platform because you put the video up there, people really get a larger sense of it. But if people are interested, they can email me directly, Mike at tallorderproductions.com, and I'll send them materials. I'll send them the link to the fiscal sponsor. And that avenue will not close until we've hit our full funding. So it's open season. If you're looking to donate, you want that tax write-off, you know where to find me.
Before I let you go, Mike, I'm curious what you might say to people listening who have kids who want to go into this business, young adults who are really thinking of finding their way in the entertainment business, seeing all the headlines about the lousy pay and the unfairness. And, really, it seems like on the one hand, a really glamorous and fun business, and the other hand, a really lousy way to make a living. Any advice for people who feel, expletive deleted the same way you do about movies?
Yeah. Well, that's the best characterization of the film industry that you could have used. I would say for sure, I personally don't have much interest in the glamour of the film industry. I'm probably like an art house purist to a fault. But I would say if you're interested in the film industry, don't go into it for that. Go into it because you love movies and you care about people being able to make movies and express themselves. And you care about people being able to make a good living doing it. And I think everyone should be encouraged and not discouraged by the strikes, because this is a huge, huge moment in film and television history. And we should get swept up in it and see what you can do when everyone gets together and demands fair pay, fair conditions, all of it. And I don't think that should discourage anyone, but I think you should come in with the attitude that you have value and your labor has value and your ideas have value too, and all of those things. And specifically, I don't think you should be discouraged from joining the film industry if you have a chronic illness. I definitely spoke about the fact that it's difficult, but that should just never be a barrier of entry. And anyone who is type 1 should be seeking out. If they want to tell stories, they absolutely should be doing it. That's part of the point of making this film too, is like, we need to just be, I always think of it as like a slow drip. Like, we need to be dripping our experience into the zeitgeist. And that's how we're going to be seen more. That's how we're going to see ourselves more and just become the way we are in real life, just a larger part of like the film landscape and what people are seeing on screen. And the best way to do that is to have people behind the camera who are type 1. So I think, yeah, anyone out there, especially parents, I think, don't be too afraid. Your kid can make it as a type 1 diabetic in the film industry. And it might be hard at times, but the future is going to be brighter. I think there's going to be better conditions for people who have chronic illnesses. So go for it.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see the movie.
Yeah, my pleasure. I can't wait for you to see it too. I think it's going to surprise people. It sounds so like grimy and all this, and it's an intense movie, but it's funny. And there's so much just love and compassion oozing out of it. And I hope people feel that, both for people with type 1 diabetes and just the characters at large.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
I can't wait to see the movie. I will keep you up to date on how the production goes and when we can watch it. In the meantime, if you want to help out Mike and the crew, I will put a link in the show notes. Mike also shared his email. That will be there as well. Looking ahead, where we're going and a peek into November. I'm so excited that Dexcom G7 is here. I know you probably have a lot of questions about insurance. You are not alone. Dexcom understands how complicated this can seem. They've made it as simple as possible. Dexcom is the #1 covered CGM brand. You can visit the Dexcom Savings Center for a free benefits check to see what coverage options are available to you. Powerful and simple, Dexcom G7 is proven to lower A1C and help you spend more time in range. Learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Looking ahead to the next couple of weeks, Mom's Night Out is finally here this weekend. I am beyond excited. I'm probably, as you listen, beyond stressed out. But we are traveling to Dallas. Mom's Night Out is in Frisco, Texas this weekend, the 13th and 14th. October 27th and 28th, we'll be in Providence, Rhode Island. We're going to try to tape some episodes at these events, not just for moms. The episodes will be for everybody. And stay tuned to hear more about what we have planned for Mom's Night Out in 2024. I wish we already could announce all the locations. We're doing this again. We're doing this in 4 places in 2024, maybe 5. But I've got to get a couple of more boxes checked before I can announce that. And then looking ahead to November, of course, it is Diabetes Awareness Month. You know, if you're a longtime listener, I don't do a lot for that on this show because every day is Diabetes Awareness Month day around here. But it's a time when a lot of media releases, media attention comes to diabetes. So I'm hoping to bring you some interesting stories. And frankly, this is a time where I can get access sometimes to people who don't normally give interviews and some companies that, are kind of tougher to get at other times during the year. I will also say that we are closing in on 600 episodes. This episode, as you listen, is 597. I have some news that I'm going to release at episode 600. I'm really excited about it. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. I hope you love it. Okay, safe travels to everybody going to Mom's Night Out this weekend. I'm ridiculously excited. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
Life is busy, and managing diabetes is a daily commitment. Edgepark can help you say goodbye to the worry of managing your diabetes supplies with a variety of cutting-edge insulin delivery systems from brands like Medtronic and Tandem. Plus, Edgepark accepts most insurance plans and handles the paperwork, so you can simplify your life, your diabetes care, and your budget in one click. Go to diabetes-connections.com, click on the Edgepark logo to learn more.